welcome to the romance track here at Continual. I'm your host, Gail Z and Morgan Brice, and we are talking about Valentine's romance here. And so we've got a slew of great authors. We talk about all things romantic and some things that might not look like romance, but really get to the heart. So want to start out with introductions. And Megan, let's start with you.
Okay, hi. I'm Meghan Maslow, and I like to say that I write mischief, magic, and murder because I need to have a little comedy. I need to have a little bit of romance. I need to have some magic, and if there's a dead body or two, all the better.
Dead bodies are always good, yes.
Always good for romance.
And Waverly.
Hi, I'm W.M. Fawkes. I write fantasy and romance, oftentimes with Sam Burns, who's here with us today. I don't have a quick, cute little plug. I should work on that.
Well, Sam.
Well, I'm Sam Burns. I'm sure everyone will be shocked to know that I often write with Waverly Fawkes. And we write romance and fantasy. My personal addition to that is that it tends to be romance and fantasy on the bright side because I don't write a dark, gritty reality. So if you're looking for an edge, maybe Waverly's solo material or someone else.
That's okay. Romance comes in all flavors. Ari.
Hi, I'm Ari McKay. I write with Rachel Langella. We actually write as both people rather than as separately together like Sam and Waverly. But we publish contemporary romance as Ari McKay, and all of our paranormal and urban fantasy are published as Rachel Langella. And we've been writing together for a very long time, so we're kind of interchangeable. So if you call one of us, we'll probably both answer.
Rowan. You're muted.
I have a dog, so I was making sure. She can be annoying sometimes. I'm Rowan McAllister. I write a little bit of everything. I started predominantly with historical and moved into contemporary, then contemporary paranormal, then fantasy. And I'm dipping my toes into self-pubbing for the first time with Megan's shared element anthology this time around. So I guess my work usually described as a comfort read because I also like soft and fluffy. You're not going to find a whole hell of a lot of angst and dying and in my books because I don't like to torture my main characters. So they could be tortured before they come to the book, but I don't usually like to torture them from that on.
How about you, EJ?
I'm EJ Russell. I write paranormal romantic comedy, supernatural romantic suspense, contemporary romantic comedy, and just once, historical. My tagline is eclectic romance, reality optional, though the subtitle might be, if it's not fun, why bother?
Good
I'm
enough.
also on the no angst train.
I'm Gail Z and Morgan Brice. As Gail, I write epic fantasy, urban fantasy, steampunk, and more. And as Morgan, I write urban fantasy, male paranormal romance. The stress or angst in my books tends to come from supernatural creatures trying to maybe kill or eat the bad guys, not from a lot of relationship stress between the good guys. Just enough to keep it interesting, but that I love happy endings and people who are besotted with each other. And I tend to write established couples. So with all that out of the way, let's talk about Valentine's Day. Now I got to start with a question and say, who here loves Valentine's Day and who here, maybe it's not your favorite. It's okay to admit that even though we're romance authors. Okay, it's 2 thumbs down, AJ. That's pretty declarative. Mixed.
I'm not a holiday person in general. So, and Valentine's Day always seemed to me very artificial, I guess. In most of my books, I don't think I've ever written a Valentine's book. A lot of my holidays, when I do write them, tend to be sort of alternative, like Celtic holidays instead, because some of my paranormal romantic comedy is centered around Celtic mythology. So not a big, also not a fan of roses. So flowers, flowers die. That seems kind of depressing if you're going to try and express your undying love for someone. You give them something that dies in the next 2 days. That seems unreasonable.
Gotta get them a succulent. It's the year of the succulent. Don't water it. It'll be fine.
Christmas cactus, right?
Yeah, there you go. I enjoy Valentine's Day. I didn't used to. I'm not a big holiday person either. And like I cry every Christmas. Like it's not big on the whole like forced celebration, but my partner is very romantic and he's the kind of guy who writes poems. And I'm the kind of person that forgets special days. And so as, I've grown to love someone who has a soft, gooey caramel core, I think I become more enthusiastic about, showing that that's more of a love language that like I can get on board with now that I understand what it means to him, even though I personally am like, okay, so I'm gonna wear like black every day, same outfit. I will eat chocolate if you give it to me. I'd prefer it to be not in the shape of a heart though, so it's grown on me slowly.
Rowan, you had mixed feelings about this.
Well, so for years and years, when my best friends and I were all single, we had a tradition. I'm going to be dating myself here and say that we used to go to Chi-Chi's every Valentine's Day together to celebrate our misery and shame. But then we're not in shame, I guess. We weren't really ashamed of being single. We were just sad that we were angry and sad. Sangry? That everyone was celebrating around us, and we were younger then though, so we were like, well, we don't care about Valentine's Day. But then I got married and my husband's a bit of a romantic, so I actually love holidays. It's a way for me to ground myself in the year, because I tend to spend, obviously, I'm sure you all can understand, a little bit too much time in my head, forget where I am. So it makes it so that the year doesn't just fly past. There's landmarks within it. And I enjoy it now more than I used to. That one I used to sort of just skip over and go to the ones I like better, but Halloween's my favorite, so. But so early on, not so much. Later in life, a little more romantic about it.
I think it is something that, depending on your experiences, your idea of what's romantic also changes. We'll talk about that in more detail later on. But I know, in my 20s, I thought, oh, wouldn't the grand gestures and all the hearts and flowers and being swept away for a weekend in Paris be great? And I've learned that, on a day-to-day basis, having somebody take out the garbage so you don't have to on a night when it's raining and push it down to the curb, or hold your hand when you're getting an epidural, even though they really, really hate needles and can't look, but they don't leave the room screaming, that's really love. It's not ooey gooey Hallmark, but where the rubber meets the road, that's really love. Anybody else want to weigh in on the whole Valentine's Day, yay or nay?
So I'll weigh in. I'm actually not a romantic, particularly, or the things that I find romantic are not necessarily things that other people would find romantic. And Mr. Maslow is funny because he always says that because I'm not, it pushes him in a way, because there's not pressure on him to be, so he always feels free to do things for me without feeling, sort of nagged at, which is nice that he does. But he understands that for me, the weight of my heart is through my stomach. And like, it's not a nice pair of, earrings or something, though I'll love them. But if he wants to make me happy, or if I'm having a really bad day, I can tell you right now, he's going out for Indian food. He's going to bring it home for me. And he's going to snuggle me with Indian, like let me eat Indian food and snuggle me. And to me, that is romantic. But the Valentine's Day itself, like depends on what's going on. You know, we try to roll with it, and I'm not going to say every Valentine's Day we do this. We'll very often on Valentine's Day or around there try to pick a restaurant we've never been to that's supposed to be a food experience. So, you know, and it can be anything. It can be ones with the really tiny, you know, tiny little, almost like tapas, you know, but where it's supposed to be this eating experience, and they use egg cream or whatever it is. You know, we'll try all these unusual places that are supposed to be an eating experience. So that's the kind of thing we'll do, and it's just for fun for both of us.
I will say that my birthday is also like less than a week before Valentine's Day. So that may have added to my mixed feelings because trying to find a restaurant in and around my birthday to go out to, since we don't really like crowds, has always been a challenge. So we always want to go to the Melting Pot, or I go to the Melting Pot annually for my birthday. It's like a 3-hour meal, fussy, get my cocktails brought to me, do cook your own food, but it's brought to you. So.
And there's cheese and chocolate.
Yeah, she speaking of Megan, speaking of restaurants, made me think of that. So,
well, we're very practical people, so we always pick another date that isn't in Valentine's week, so we don't hit the jacked up menu prices and the weird, you know, prefix menu where, oh, you can only get these 5 things, usually at Melting Pot. And if anybody gets roses, they're from Trader Joe's, because that way we can savor the fact that they were also cheap, even though aren't they pretty? And that just makes them even prettier. So we're terribly practical like that. Look, we got roses, and they were only $7.99. Just make them sweeter.
Okay, I have to ask, are you from the Midwest originally? Because that's a Midwest thing. Anything you get, and someone's like, "Oh, I like your sweater. Thanks, I got it on sale. It was this amount." You can't just.
Northwestern.
It has to be New England. Yeah, it has to be New England too, because my curmudgeonly husband is from Connecticut, and he is like, you know, use it. What does he say? Use it up, wear it out, make it do, or do it out. It's kind of that's his
Northwestern
mantra.
Pennsylvania may not be exactly Midwest, but you can see it from there.
Okay, first of all, I really feel left out now because I have no idea what the Melting Pot is, and I think I should be jealous of that.
You should.
It's a fun restaurant.
I live in Iowa. We don't really have a lot here. There's a McDonald's on the corner. Anyway, no. I have a depiction of Valentine's Day in one of my books, and the character is basically me, how I respond to Valentine's Day. At the very beginning, everyone's like, "So what are you doing today?" And he's like, "My job. What are you talking about?" So that's pretty much Valentine's and most every other holiday for me. I will eat the heart-shaped chocolate and I will coo over the roses if you want me to, but I'm never going to be the sort of person who's like, "I have planned a 16-course dinner for this day, and you will sit there and you will eat it and you will read me poetry." It doesn't even sound fun. but at the same time, you know, who's going to turn down chocolate?
I actually had someone do that to me. She, it was a family friend who invited us all over for dinner once, or it was actually lunch, and we were sitting on her porch, and she handed each of us a little roll that had a poem printed on it and made us read it out loud. It was the most uncomfortable Valentine's Day I've ever had, because do not make me read poetry. I can't act. I can't, like, there's nothing lyrical or graceful about me outside of the like written word. Oh, it was the worst.
The best poetry reading I was ever at was at a sci-fi convention at 11 o'clock at night. And the 4 guys who were reading their poetry were the better part of a defensive line for football. These were all big guys who probably each weighed in around 300, beards. I mean, if they'd have come at you in a dark alley and you didn't know them, you'd have run the other way. And yes, they were passing some peach moonshine and a bottle of Jack through the audience, which really, if you ever do a book reading and you want your audience to stay, that's a trick. And they read the most candid, heart-wrenching, you know, open my chest and bleed for you stuff. And I'm sitting there going, if I wasn't here, I wouldn't believe this, but God, these guys are ripping my heart out. So see, you never know.
As long
Ari,
as I don't have to read it, I guess it's okay.
Ari, how about you?
I am not a very romantic person. I will admit I am extremely pragmatic. And so, yeah, you would definitely find me with the coupons and getting stuff on sale. But, and I don't know, is this a theme in here? I'm also married to a guy who is excruciatingly romantic, to where it's like, it's like, I have to go out of my way to make sure that I reciprocate, because he's going to feel super bad if I don't, right? So normally what we do, and of course with the current world situation, it's not happening this year, but we like to take a cruise at Valentine's Day, because that's just a really nice thing. We can do it together. It's a couples thing, and we really enjoy doing stuff like that. And as far as writing about Valentine's Day, Rachel and I have written both the excruciatingly soppy, sentimental Valentine's Day type thing in a couple of our stories. And then we have a really horrible, angsty, terrible kind of Valentine's Day story about coming out in one of our books that's actually currently off market because we just got it back from the publisher, and we're going to be self-pubbing it, but it's called Fortune Slings and Cupid's Arrows. And yeah, that's just about what you would think it would be about.
So with all of this, mixed feelings about Valentine's Day, as romance authors, what kind of stuff do you put your characters through? Not necessarily on Valentine's Day, but when you're thinking up that meet cute, or that, those love languages, or how are they showing their undying affection to each other? How much do you base that on real life, or the opposite of real life, or what sounds fun even if you haven't done it? Dive in.
I think there's a reason. I mean, there's a reason that I really enjoy fantasy romance, because I do think that it gives you more options on how to do it. And I really like comedy, because sometimes love is really funny. And it's like Waverly was saying about Grace, like, all your characters are supposed to be wonderful and graceful and all this, and really that's not life. And so I love to have ones who are not all the time, and so their meet cutes, maybe that one trips into another, or it can happen in ways, I think, that are kind of funny when you're reading it, because you can, as a reader, identify, not everyone has the absolute perfect meet cute moment in real life. But I think the other thing is, because I write fantasy, I like to write about, things like cherubs or others. In fact, my latest book has cherubs, but I always like to flip the tropes. And so my cherubs are, they go around, they shoot people with arrow and make you fall in love, but they are not very nice. Like, you do not really want to be shot with one of these arrows. So I like to play with those kind of tropes within the romance.
I think I had so much fun writing a story for, it first appeared in the Heart to Heart 4 paranormal anthology, and it's now out as Nutty for You, but it's a squirrel shifter who falls in love with the guy who's scared to death of squirrels. And the squirrel's love language is definitely, the squirrel guy likes to give you presents. And so he would watch this guy that he really thought was cute go jogging, and he would bring him a pretty rock, or he would bring him a dandelion in as a squirrel, and it weirded the guy out so badly he quit going jogging because his squirrel kept bringing him things. But it's just kind of fun to play with those things. You're right, with paranormal we have the real world and all these other things that you can do as well. How about anybody else?
In the first, you can go ahead.
No, I was going to say, my curmudgeonly husband is one of the most sarcastic people in the world. He's just hilarious. And it was one of the things that attracted to me to him at first. We met at a summer theater in Vermont years ago. We both have a theater background. So and at least two of our kids are also quite sharp in their wit. So all of my characters tend to have that kind of sort of dichotomy, or at least a little bit of interaction where they play off of one another. And I love banter. I don't like, I tend more towards I Love Lucy than, Grey's Anatomy. It's much more screwball comedy. That's the kind of thing that I like to see.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else want to jump in on that one?
In the first book that Sam and I ever wrote together, Prince of Death, we actually had this kind of weird moment where you're dealing with writing a lot of, Greek mythology and gods. So we wrote Aphrodite on the page, and we wrote Eros, and we took that moment, and just hearing you all talk about how you kind of sharp comedy, how romance can be sort of problematic or unwanted or funny, or something that is dangerous to your heart, even if it's not dangerous to your person. Being able to personify that on the page in a very literal way was really fun, because we made these characters and we looked at them and they're all sassy and demanding and absolutely unrelenting and pushing the main characters toward each other and being involved in their personal lives that these characters just aren't really prepared for. And so I think that's really funny that as romance authors, none of us really consider this to be something that's easy or comfortable. It's all, even when it is good and joyous, it can be very dramatic at the same time.
A little sharp and pointy even when it's not.
I don't think that in relating it back to Valentine's Day in real life isn't supposed to be about conflict, but if you write a story with no conflict, it's pretty darn boring. So we can't really go with all the hearts and flowers and roses from beginning to end and build our story around that, because I would consider that relatively boring. So there always has to be some sort of spin. And so in real life, you have your spin, your conflict all day, every day. And Valentine's Day is about an escape from that, about setting that aside for one day and just using tradition as a crutch. If you don't, if you don't have your own traditions already established, you've got a set of rules to follow. Poor guys out there who are like, I don't know what to do. Okay, buy roses, buy chocolates. I've been told what to do. I can go do it. Until, obviously, those of us, who've been with our partners for longer, you establish your own patterns on what you consider Valentine's Day appropriate.
Yeah, I think that's in line with what Gail was saying earlier, especially in your 20s, you have this notion that romance has to be this. You have to go out for dinner, you have to have this set meal, you have to bring flowers and chocolates and, do all of these specific things because that's what we've been told to do. And then, later on you realize romance really means something different for everyone. So Valentine's Day, or any day that you want to be romantic, turns into something very different than, roses and chocolates and fancy dinner. Unless it's like Megan was saying, a fancy dinner that's more of an adventure for you to go to with your loved one.
Any thoughts, Ari?
Oh, I was just thinking so much about, the whole meet cute thing, and I suck at writing those because I find humor very hard. I can write gunfights. I can write any kind of battle that you want. Maybe that goes back to the fact that I met my husband at a D&D game, but I am much more into the adventure stuff. And so writing things that are cute is not something that comes very naturally to me. And it's one reason why I'm always in awe of writers who can write comedy and write those kind of things that flow very naturally, because every time I try it, it just seems very forced. So for Rachel and I, our guys are much more likely to meet at a gun battle than, into something cute.
You know, I read a statistic once that said that there were actually more marriages that came out of people who met playing World of Warcraft than on some of the dating apps. And I can definitely
Wow.
see that working, because until you have looted and pillaged beside someone, you don't really know them.
Definitely something missing in today's society. We don't get to loot and pillage beside our prospective mates.
Oh, never marry anybody who plays a chaotic neutral either. I don't trust those guys.
I think
And if you marry somebody who runs around and scoops up all the gold and lets you kill the orcs, you know this is not going to work.
Yeah.
You're going to be the one taking out the
I think-
trash.
I think if my curmudgeonly husband was going to loot and pillage something, he would loot cast iron cookware. He has so much cast iron cookware. I think Oregon is going to drop into the ocean soon from the weight of it all.
Well, let's hope you never have to bug out, because you'll never be able to take it with you.
But you
I
have a
know.
great armory if you ever need to, you know,
That's true.
It's true.
Just hold it up as a shield.
hold it up as a shield, swing that puppy. I mean, you know, you're covered.
Mhm.
Somehow we ended up with violence. Back to Valentine's.
Sorry, Michael.
I think it's
Yes.
true.
I was gonna say, like, my husband and I cannot play games together because I do get violent. I'm very, very competitive, and he's good at things, and he's very patient and kind, and everyone wants to like team up with him, and I'm like, no, blood and gore, that is it. And so yeah, it's not good for us, and maybe we should have played more games, but I'm afraid we wouldn't have gotten to the point we are if we had.
So what's maybe one of the most unusual romantic gestures any of your characters have made when they've been trying to win the heart of their beloved?
One of my guys really impressed his significant other by installing a thermostat in the computer room.
Okay. Get a
Because
cold.
otherwise all of the servers would have burnt up, because the project was going down the tubes, and he was very impressed by the fact that he installed the thermostat.
Now I feel like
So
Waverly
romantic.
and I go too flashy, because like ours is like, well, he threw himself in the middle of danger and, you know, basically did something that was almost certainly going to get him killed to save Washington, D.C. That was impressive and got them back together. Oops.
But we also have, I feel like, a lot of baking love language that comes up a lot, like in Wildfire. Wilder Pratt buys Hermes an entire shelf of boxed brownie mix, and that is how they convey I love you. And then in the story we just wrote for the Magic Emporium series, what brings them together is a fortune cookie. And just the act of giving a baker something that he was working on. So I feel like we have a lot of food love languages, and that might just be because we both are hungry while I forget to write, and I just get really hungry. I'm like, you know what I'm going to write about? Brownies. So food.
We've been rewatching the Great British Baking Show for the umpteenth time, and the problem is you get hungry for whatever it is that they're baking today, you know, and especially now you can't just run out and get it. So if you don't have a handy delivery place, you're just stuck looking at those whatevers and going, that looks so good.
Yeah.
I binged watched all of the cake episodes.
Mm-hmm.
We've used food a lot too. In fact, we have a whole series called Recipe for Romance that we actually did all the recipes and actually put them in the book for what the guys ended up making. So yeah, food is kind of a good go-to for a gesture, because I don't know, there's something about the process of creation, I guess, and I don't know, maybe we're hungry all the time, but it's like, yeah, food sounds good. That's a good way to go.
You know, mine is actually, if I really think about it, and the thread in probably all my books is probably self-sacrifice, actually, where one character realizes they both can't get what they want. They both can't be happy. And he wants the other person to be happy, and whether, you know, or safe. A lot of times it's safe. And so that's the gesture. It's, I'm in love with you, but we can't be together because of X. And I'm not going to fight this. You know, I'm going to let you go because, you know, this is my sacrifice for you because it'll make your life better. Or it'll be with something where there's danger and the person realizes that if they can't get out of this, only one of them can escape. And so they're going to step up. Now, of course, in the end, there is always a happily ever after. So in the end, it doesn't work out that way. But the point is that they try to make that sacrifice for the other. And so it's not things in mine, I don't think so much as that personal gesture.
Yeah, that's very much true with mine as well, where the world is ending or the dark witch is about to make your beloved into a human sacrifice. And so you really have to stop that from happening, although you're probably going to die stopping it. And as one does. And, you know, that's, or the serial killer is just about to kill your beloved and you sacrifice, you know, yourself to get between the two of them, even though you're also outing yourself to the entire police department and you're a detective. And so this is probably going to ruin your career. And yeah, I'm with you on that. That grand gesture of sacrifice makes my little heart go pitter pat.
Yeah.
I love the sacrifice too, but as often as not, I end up writing these characters who are like clinging like baby howler monkeys. Like, no, I will not let you go. You can't die right now because I need you. Therefore, I'm going to be the one to save you.
Yeah, it's funny when I realized that even in that crazy squirrel shifter one, it ended up being a hurt comfort story with a squirrel.
As one does.
Yes, because squirrels are badass. We all know this.
Well, they're more badass than I am. I mean, they live outside. I couldn't do that.
Have you seen them jump from branch to branch? I mean, my gosh.
I need my space heater and like 18 blankets, and I couldn't handle it.
What's maybe one of the favorite tropes you've seen, whether it's a meet cute or a, you know, sacrifice play or whatever, in maybe a movie or a TV show or a book by somebody else that just, you know, is the thing you always kind of come back to in the back of your mind? I'll blather on while you think. There's a movie that's kind of, it's not your typical romance movie. It's called Last Holiday with Queen Latifah. And she's had this crush on this guy she works with, but she's never going to tell him. And she even has made this kind of stalkery scrapbook of pictures of him from work and things that it's just personal for her. And then she gets a misdiagnosis and thinks she only has like 3 months to live. And she's been very, very careful about saving money for retirement and has foregone a lot of enjoyable things to do that. And then she goes, well, if I'm only going to live for another month, I'm blowing the wad. I'm going to buy the clothes and I'm going to go on the fantastic vacation and I'm going to do all this stuff because what the hell? And of course, it turns out she isn't really dying. And along the way, her crush finds out what's going on and comes to try to, you know, save her from all of this. But I loved it because it didn't play by the rules per se. And so I was surprised, even though I knew they were going to get their happy ending. Anything you want to mention? And you know, no harm, no foul if you say Love Actually, you know, we all understand.
Oh, I'm a sucker for good guys. I like good guys. I tend to like geeks. One of my favorite romantic movies is Dave. I don't know if it's an older movie, Kevin Kline and Sigourney Weaver. Kevin Kline plays a double for the president. And the president has a stroke while he's cheating on his wife in like the first scene. And so they bring in this double who runs a temp agency, and he essentially starts temping as the president. And Sigourney Weaver plays the First Lady, who has a very antagonistic relationship with her real husband, and they end up falling in love because Dave, the temp, is just a really good guy, and sort of everyone who sees him starts to realize that that's actually something that's admirable, being a good guy, not being powerful, just being a stand-up guy.
In a historical context, that reminds me of, I think it was Summersby. It was a guy who meets a
Richard Gere and
yeah.
Jodie Foster, right? Yeah.
It's a couple hundred years ago, and it's a prince and a pauper thing where the wealthy guy meets a poor guy when they're in the army, and they're dead ringers for each other. And the wealthy guy's a real jerk, and the poor guy ends up taking his place, but he's a nice guy, and his wife falls in love with him, and the servants are like, wow, can you believe he's like not a jerk anymore? And he kind of takes over the whole guy's life. And kind of the same sort of trope. How about the rest of you guys?
Oh, me,
Well, that one didn't end up so well.
No, it didn't. It was a good idea though.
I'm all about the morally ambiguous badass. I cannot resist Han Solo, Mal Reynolds, Snape. I mean, you just give me a morally ambiguous badass, and I am all over that, because I really, I don't know, there's just something about them where it's like, you just, yes, that they're, and they're going to turn out good, in the end, but you're never quite sure, when it starts out. But yeah, I'm a sucker for that.
Me too. I'm all in for the guy who's like seen some bad stuff and he thinks he's tainted by the experiences he's had, and maybe then he meets, a nice sunshine guy like EJ's, and then they fall in love, and he's like, oh, but my heart, it's too dark. I'm not worthy of your brightness. And the other guy's like, of course you are. You're beautiful in your darkness. I love it. No, I'm all about the sunshine grumpy one. And my favorite characters to write are the ones that aren't afraid to get a little blood on their kitchen knives. I'm just a little bit stabby when it calls for it. It's my thing.
Yeah, I'm like that too. And like good, I like Good Omens. I just wanted to see the ending I wanted to have for it. But
Now kiss.
but I love those kind of characters, the grumpy and sunshine one. I like someone who is a little more morally ambiguous as well. It's not that they don't have ethics, it's that they have their ethics. And they sometimes realize that their ethics don't work so well necessarily with this other person and who they really like. And so trying to figure that out, and how much do they stay the morally ambiguous character, and how much do they shift a little and grow in certain ways too. But yeah, I love that. That's probably my favorite.
I would say
Anybody me knows that I'm a huge Supernatural fan, so I am right there with you on morally ambiguous and grumpy guys with a heart of gold.
I'm kind of the opposite. I like the super uptight. Give me Colin Firth.
Oh,
Mr. Darcy.
my heart.
Super uptight, but they have a strong moral foundation. The way in which they express it may be poorly chosen. They have to learn a lesson. I like to see them get rumpled up a little bit, like the uptight to start with, and then rumpled up later on. I'm also, a sucker for a Cinderella story. I don't care what it is. Can't help it. From my childhood on. I don't know why. Just loves it.
I don't know anyone who doesn't love a Cinderella story.
I don't know that I'd want to be friends with someone who doesn't.
There's a reason it's stuck around.
That is.
I'm also on the other side a sucker for the wallflower. The wallflower who gets seen. Give me a story like that and I'm all about it.
Well, folks, believe it or not, we have actually blown through the hour. So let's go around again. Tell everybody what you've got coming out, or point to that book on your backlist that's perfect Valentine's Day reading, and tell us where they can find you online. And I'm going to go around the opposite direction, start with EJ this time.
Okay, well, I had a book called Best Beast come out in January, which is a paranormal romantic comedy. And I've got one in the Royal Powers Shared World series coming out later in February called King's X.
Cool. Ari?
We've actually been kind of just publishing backlist stuff lately because of getting so many stories back from a publisher. We can be found at arimckay.com, or you can find us at on Amazon as both Ari McKay and Rachel Angela. Ari McKay for the contemporary and Rachel Angela for the paranormal. And the thing that we have coming out will be in the Magic Emporium series, the Shared Element series. And it's called Stop Dragging My Heart Around. And it's DRAGON, which kind of gives away part of the plot, but that'll be coming out April 1st. And yes, that date, we picked that date. So for a specific reason.
Rowan?
Well, my next release is in the Magic Emporium anthology. It's February 11th. It's Hexes and Horns. Unicorn Shifter Moonshiner meets Dark Witch on the Wagon. And I do have the third book in my fantasy series coming out sometime. It's supposed to be first quarter, but I don't have a release date yet. And that's called The Seer. The first book is The Wanderer, second book, The Priest, third book, The Seer. They're sort of following tarot deck sort of themology, as well as it is my homage to fantasy. So every trope I can possibly slam into the 8-book series, I'm going to do it. You will see it all eventually. And they all sort of lead together, but they're all individual couples. So I have 2 books coming out in fantasy. And you can find me on Facebook, Rowan McAllister, Twitter, Rowan McAllister, and Amazon. That's me. I don't have a website yet, but since I'm now dipping my toes in the world of self-pub, I suppose I'll have to get one.
And Sam and Waverly?
I'm sure it'll shock everyone to know that we also have a story in the Shared Element series. It's A Dragon's Fortune. It's about a dragon who bakes tiny buns shaped like rabbits. That's my kind of ridiculously light fluffy. And then also that's coming out this month. That's January on the 28th. And then also I have another book coming out on the 11th of February, the second book in the Fantastic Fluke series, Fluke and the Faithless Father.
Yay! I love the
Cool.
book series.
Thank you.
Waverly?
Oh, well, Sam kind of
kinda
covered
stole
what's
hers.
coming out soon. But if you like stabby fellows, we have a fantasy a multi-point of view high fantasy series. So it has MM couples and FF couples and lots of different stuff going on. The first book in that is The King's Dragon, which is already out now, and it's also available in audio. And you can find all that at Fawkes Writes, my name, with the word rights.com.
And Megan?
So my next publication will be also in the Magic Emporium, and it's Must Love Demons. And it's really about an incubus, which is normally a lust demon, but he's much more interested in happily ever afters than one night stands. And his magic doesn't work the way other incubi, their magic works. He has love magic. So his fondest dream is to be a cherub, but he's 7 feet tall. He looks ridiculous in the little togas they make him wear, and they make him carry around the little tiny bow and arrow that's their size, not his. And he's not a very good cherub. And unfortunately, he ends up, they have some new cherub technology, and he ends up lassoing himself to a very grumpy phoenix shifter, who's a warden, which is sort of like an FBI agent who's on a case because there is a society killer within their city. and they get lassoed together and they cannot seem to undo the magic. And it's called the lariat of love that holds them together. And so they have to sort of learn to live their lives, at least in the short term, together. So it's a forced proximity romance. And so that's next up, and that will be on February 18th. It looks like in April, I will be having an urban fantasy coming out. I don't want to say too much about that yet because that can possibly shift. That's based on Rumpelstiltskin because we're doing fairy tales and I like to be contrary and pick really hard ones to work with. And then I have the next one in the Starfig Investigations. I can't ever get too far away from Twig and Quinn. They'll be out in the summer.
And where can we find you?
You can find me at meganmaslow.com. You can definitely find me on Facebook. I'm there all the time, more than I should be. I'm on Amazon. I'm not as much on Twitter, although I do show up occasionally. So, but Facebook or my website or Amazon are really the way to go. And all of it's under Meghan Maslow.
Cool. Well, let's see. My Valentine story is Cover Me, and it is free in Prolific Works. It's part of my Badlands series, and you end up having a 70-year-old mystery and two ghosts that have been pining for each other. And then the next release, I'm also in the Fairy Tales anthology, and mine is a retelling of the Three Billy Goats Gruff. So we have a fainting goat shifter and Baphomet and Perkta and Krampus as one does. So, and a romance. And then I'm also in the Magic Emporium series, and I think I've got the very last release date there by design. And so I'm excited about that. Both that story and the goat story are part of my Fawkes Hollow extended world. So excited about those things. And you can find me mostly on Facebook, but look for Gail Z Martin, don't forget the Z, and Morgan Brice, and you'll find me on just about every platform out there. So thank you all very, very much for being here. Thank you for sharing your evening with everyone and telling us all about the wonderful books and just having a wonderful conversation on romance. And thank you folks for watching us. There'll be a lot more romance here on Continual, so stay tuned and we'll see you online.